Hi everyone, welcome back to my little corner of the internet, and today we're gonna talk about it's not new anymore, fairly recent Netflix original Japanese release, a TV show called Tokyo Swindlers. So let's just get into it because I need to vent. Okay, let's start with the fact that I was very easily able to watch the whole thing in a day, so in that regard I can say it's bingeable, but I also think it was genuinely bad. I want to discuss this with you, and I want to find out what is good about it, because clearly it grabbed my interest enough so that I could watch all however many episodes it was. But in order to do that, we need to talk about the entire show, and that includes all of the bad as well, and also spoilers. So, spoiler alert. So, let's talk about the plot. The show revolves around a group of land swindlers, the word swindler is a bit of an issue for me because the name of the show is Tokyo Swindlers in English, but I feel like it's just scammers. Let's just use scammers because swindlers is just such a weird word. Yeah? Okay, so they're land scammers is what they are. Basically, they find a very expensive plot of land and they pretend to be the owners and brokers for the land, and then they convince a real realtor to purchase the land. And by the time they find out that they don't actually own the land, the scammers have disappeared with the money. During the show, the gang focuses on selling this massive plot of land to a very big realtor company. So the Tokyo Swindlers are as follows. We have Harrison Yamanaka. He's the ringleader. He makes the plans and is also a complete psychopath. We'll put a pin in that. Then we have Takumi, who is his closest confidant, and he has been working with Harrison from around 5 years prior to the show's start and has a tragic past. He is in charge of forging all of the paperwork. Reiko is the HR of the group, basically. Her job is to find the right person to impersonate the landowner and help them memorize all of the information necessary. Goto is an asshole, is literally all he is. I'm not really sure what he does other than pretend to be an asshole Osaka realtor that has no time for your bullshit. That's basically his one trick. I don't know why somebody would do business with that guy, but apparently he's really good at it and people believe him, so whatever. Then we got Takeshita, who is a meth head, so that's fun. His job is to gather intel, but he is also extremely greedy and a jerk. On the opposite side, we have two police officers. One is basically a cliche. So he is 6 months away from retirement and has a history with Harrison. The other one is another cliche, which is a brand new recruit who's hot-headed and eager to make her mark. Finally, we have the scammed, the swindlees, if you will, the people who are getting screwed. The main one being this realtor Aoyagi, who is a cocky idiot who gets screwed by both the scammers and his own company. Not entirely sure he deserved that, but he is kind of sleaze, so whatever. And then we got Natsumi, who is this nun who owns the land that the scammers pretend to sell. Technically, Natsumi isn't getting scammed since she keeps her land, but she's a big part of the show and I need to categorize her somehow, so let's just go with that. Also, this guy named Abiru is also there, and it's a third-party contracting company, and I guess they also get scammed, but we barely pay attention to them. Okay. Let's start with what I did find interesting. I think the premise of the show is interesting, although it is harder to relate to these types of scammers as opposed to other style of heist genres. When you follow a gang of bank robbers, for example, you know that the money that they're still stealing is not hurting anyone. It's the bank's money and everybody's insured, so like, screw them, right? It's the same with like Ocean's 11, for example, right? Who cares about a crooked casino owner? He's dating Clooney's wife, so therefore how dare he, and he must, be dealt with. Basically, what I'm trying to say is if you make the criminals charismatic enough and the target unpleasant enough, you should have an easy road ahead of you in terms of the audience rooting for the criminals. Tokyo Swindlers, though, doesn't do that. And I don't think they are trying to, which could be interesting, but it is a really, really big hurdle for the viewer. And all of these people are objectively terrible. They are ruining people's lives, and it doesn't help when the ringleader, Harrison, is completely homicidal. He has zero issues with killing people for absolutely no reason other than for his own thrill. The only two members of the group that are somewhat redeemable are Reiko and Takumi. So Reiko is redeemable because we barely know anything about her, neither good nor bad. She has also like this little redeeming point in the end where she does like a little good thing, but honestly, for the majority of a show, she could be a lamp and it wouldn't really matter. She's barely an inconvenience. Then we have Takumi. So like I mentioned earlier, he has a tragic past. We find out early on that his father tried to set himself on fire and in doing so burned down their house with his own wife, Takumi's wife, and Takumi's 5-year-old son. So the father survives and is in jail, but Takumi was out of the house at the time, so he also survived. We later find out that the reason this happened is because they fell for this land scam and they lost basically all of their money. So it makes you think that the only reason Takumi is in the gang is for revenge. But no, not really. He kind of stumbled into the job and is just going along with it. So this is where I found things rather surprising. There are a few plot points that I was sure I knew where they were going. I was sure that Takumi would be seeking revenge for the death of his family and that he knew that Harrison was involved. So I thought he was like playing the long game and was going to like out-scam or scam the scammers out of all of their money. It seemed to be where his story would be heading, and then it would be like a revenge story, right? Which apparently is the majority of the Netflix original Japanese shows are somewhat revenge based, which is quite an interesting thing to think about. But anyway, that's kind of where I thought it was going. In addition to that, I thought he would half clash and half collaborate with the old detective who would be on his tail and kind of act like his moral compass, and then they would bring down Harrison together. Color me surprised when neither of these things happened. Not at all. The first surprise was that the fact that they actually killed the old detective. I was genuinely shocked. You know, like when it happened, I was like, you know what? Kind of refreshing. We took a twist. It's okay. Now, the newbie is taking over and is seeking revenge for her mentor and her partner. The problem with that is that she barely did anything at all. Like, she barely shows up afterwards, but she's there for revenge occasionally, mostly in a parking lot. The second was, as I mentioned, the Takumi's revenge plot. The problem here is there wasn't one at all. Like, Takumi doesn't even know until the final episode that Harrison was involved in the scamming of his father's money. And even Harrison says he didn't know until after they started working together. So like, what the fuck? What's the point of all of this? So yeah, the whole show, we're basically watching a group of terrible people committing terrible crimes against other terrible people. Mind you, like I said, Aoyagi is obnoxious, but is not actively a bad person. Or like the bad things he does are not criminal. So his whole story is this massive project he was in charge of fell through at the last minute. And in order to save his career and his reputation, he needed to find a substitute plot of land to build said project on. He's getting pressured by nasty colleagues and higher-ups to get it done, so he does. He makes a fatal mistake in foregoing certain safety measures, but tries to compensate by insisting on others. And honestly, at that point, I don't think he is to blame. If everything seems legal and correct, and you get to meet the landowner, and you enter the premises, how was he supposed to know it was a scam? At the end of the day, everybody's sitting there like, ha, the idiot. But everything was legal. Also, he was never alone, you know, like there's a team of people around him. Speaking of the landowner though, we focus a lot on the nun, Natsumi Kawai, because the gang wants to get her out of the house so they can pretend to own it. Fine, okay. But she ends up being depicted like a sex fiend that's obsessed with this nasty host, and it's a whole thing. So they need to extort the host to convince him to take Natsumi away so that he can have the house for a day. And then we find out that the host himself is a skis and he has a thing for underage girls, and so they blackmail him with that. It's just this chain reaction of bad people screwing over bad people, which is frankly kind of boring. It's not that they get to save the girls, they just threaten to expose the host for his improprieties. And you're like, this brings me to one of the more awkwardly bad things about the show, which is the sex scenes. My god, what the actual fuck with those? First of all, they're unnecessary. Second of all, they were all bad, just actively unpleasant to watch. Not just awkward, but just like, ew. And I don't think they were supposed to be ew. I don't know. It felt more like, you know, the early HBO and Showtime TV shows where they had scandalous sex scenes because they could. It was a similar situation here where regular Japanese TV wouldn't let them do these types of scenes. So it's like, yay, Netflix lets us, have fun. But also let's keep everybody fully clothed, please, because, we don't want to see that. It was just weird. Like, why would you depict a character as this sex fiend and have her do this scandalous sex scene, but then everybody is just fully clothed? I don't know. It was very, very awkward and weird. Honestly, it's more awkward than just your regular sex scenes at this point. Finally, I feel like there are huge gaps in logic regarding the actual premise of the scam. So several times we see that the realtors find out that they've been scammed because the approval gets denied by someone. I'm talking about like previous scams, not the current one. So a signature is deemed to be forged or something like that. And this is all after the money has been transferred. We never see a situation where a property is already demolished and construction is underway only for the landowner to suddenly show up and be like, what the fuck did you do to my house? Or situations where the landowner has to go on this long legal battle to prove that the property was theirs to begin with and that they never sold it. It reminded me of the real story that happened not too long ago where a construction company in Hawaii built a house on the wrong plot of land and the landowner then had to go to court to try and get it back. I think the case is still ongoing, and that one, when you hear it, seems very cut and dry. So imagine, and it's not going well, it was completely insane. So imagine a case like the ones in the show where all of the documents seem legit, everything is signed and paid for, but then a person shows up to claim that no, actually it's their house and they never sold it. Like, how do you go on and prove that? The most we see is when the real Natsumi is getting slightly inconvenienced by reporting the matter of trespassers to the police, and that's how the realtors find out that they were scammed. It's very convenient how all of the scams just resolve. We'll say resolve, but it's in the favor of the scammers. So then the question remains, why was it such an easy viewing? The show is 7 episodes long and each one is about an hour long. I think that for a Japanese show, the acting is very toned down to appease a more Western audience. I also think that the pacing of the show was very good. Things moved along relatively quickly, and although there are way more tell than show, it was easy enough to follow along. Then there's the surprise twists, like the death of the detective. I think that's pretty refreshing, although not entirely unheard of in Japanese media. Death Note. Finally, I think the show looked good. The cinematography was engaging and it made things really pleasing to the eye, which is a big thing. So, no, I absolutely cannot recommend you to watch Tokyo Swindlers. It is trash, but it's engaging trash, well-paced trash, visually pleasing trash. Yeah, probably. But honestly, they really need to work on this antagonist as the main character thing. We have shows where the villains are the main point of interest. Sure, you can point to Dexter or Breaking Bad, but also, as I cleverly coughed my way through earlier, Death Note. It's a Japanese one, so it's not unheard of within this culture. You can have an interesting villain as long as that person, that villain, your main character, has something that the audience can relate to. Harrison is disgusting. He's obnoxious, he is psychotic, he's homicidal, and there's nothing redeeming about him at any point. So why would I watch him? Have you watched Tokyo Swindlers? Did you enjoy it? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And what is your favorite antagonist-led show? And what is your favorite revenge-based show? I would love to hear your thoughts. So thank you so very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, do all of the things. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.